Hi everybody, I'm with Derek Peever from PeeverConn Group of Companies, here to talk a very exciting story about his life and real estate. Thanks for joining us today.
Sure, yeah, well, I really appreciate you guys coming out here and the opportunity to share my story.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
I guess my story starts back in the beginning when I was born in New Westminster. You know, I grew up in Surrey and Pitt Meadows and Cloverdale, Aldergrove. You know, very average middle class upbringing, very fortunate. You know, I always had everything I needed and had good mentoring growing up and everything like that, so I had a solid foundation, but really just average. You know, when I was in grade 5, I think I got my first job, paper route, and I've been working ever since pretty much. Looney stores, gas stations, you know, pretty much any job I could get. My family background is in the marine industry. So my grandpa, my dad, my brother all work on the boats, on the tugboats, and that was the path I was heading down. When I was in grade 11, I started riding around for free with my brother on the tugs, and you know, finally somebody's wife went into labor and I was sprung into action. So they realized I could do the job, and then I would get the odd call out, and that's kind of how I broke into that. Awesome job, really good time off. You know, salary, usually like a lifetime career job that you get into, but for me it just, you know, wanted something more, something different. So, you know, the day that really changed it all around for me was in 2005. A friend of mine called me up just kind of randomly and asked me if I'd come for a ride down to Vancouver Airport with him to pick up his boss, and he was renovating homes for this lady, and you know, it wasn't something I would normally do, but I just said, okay, you know, we'll go for a cruise. And the whole way back from the airport to Pitt Meadows, this lady was telling us about her investments in Winnipeg and Alberta, and she mentioned a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad. And you know, I just remember the whole way back to Pitt Meadows, just leaning over the back seat like this, like just glued to what she was saying, because it just really hit home with me. And I think it was the very next day I went out and bought this book called Rich Dad Poor Dad. And like, I hadn't read books in years. Like, I read a book about working out, but I wasn't like a reader, right? Like, it wasn't my thing. But for whatever reason, I went and got this book, and you know, a couple chapters in, I just started having this paradigm shift where my whole plan that I had outlaid for myself just drastically changed. And just my whole philosophy around what to do with money and things like that really changed. And at the time I had saved up about $25,000 from my job, and I had about $25,000 in lines of credit that I could use because I had a good job. And my plan was to buy a principal residence in Aldergrove, and you know, maybe buy a Harley and a recreational boat, and you know, do the whole usual deal. But that book just totally changed my plan, and instead I took that $25,000 and I went 4 ways with my partner Carson, my dad and his dad, and we bought 3 condos in Agassiz. Just tiny little condos, you know, $65,000 for a 2-bedroom, $50,000 for our second one, and $52,000 for the third one. And we would renovate them. Like, we didn't know how to do anything, but we just figured it out. I knew how to paint and do certain things from working on the boats, but we just figured it out as we went and renovated all the units, rented them out, you know, raised the rent. We actually sold those first 3 condos 3 years later, and the gentleman that bought them included a vehicle as part of his down payment, and I was able to give that to my mom for Christmas one year, so that was pretty cool, and you know, that's what it's all about. It felt pretty good to do that for my mom because, you know, her car was breaking down and stuff, so.
Book. Tell me a little bit more about the book itself.
And the book, really, Rich Dad Poor Dad, really changes your philosophy around assets and liabilities. And the basic definition is that an asset puts money into your pocket every month and a liability takes money out. So taking on debt for things like a Harley or a boat, you know, it's just didn't make sense anymore. So now I've delayed all those things, 10 years plus. And my plan is that the assets will buy them for me. It won't come out of my own earned income. The second book in the series is called The Cash Flow Quadrant, and it's got a really valuable lesson in there about the 4 quadrants. So there's the employee quadrant, the self-employed quadrant, the business owner quadrant, and the investor quadrant. And I realized that I was in the employee quadrant, which was the most highly taxed quadrant, where you're swapping hours for dollars. And no matter how good of a job you do, you really can only go so high with the glass ceiling compared to everybody else in the union type of environment, right? So I just felt like I wanted more, and that's kind of what started me down the path of learning. And I read all the books in that series, started going to seminars, and taking people out for lunch that I thought I could learn something from, and that's kind of how the whole thing got started.
What exactly did you learn in the book?
Well, I'm 29 years old now. I turned 30 in February. I consider myself really fortunate that the lady Kelly Fry told me about Rich Dad Poor Dad when she did, because I was, I think, 21 years old or something like that. And if I hadn't heard about that book for another 10 years, I might have just been not even on this path at all, chances are, right? So it really reminds me and everyone to mention things like, if you have a good book on fitness or health, or a good learning source on real estate or business or investing, to share it with people, because 9 out of 10 times it might not mean anything, they don't do anything with it, but it's going to hit home once in a while with somebody and just totally change the way their life works out. So I still see Kelly Fry, and I always introduce her as the lady that turned my light bulb on, and I'm just super grateful for that, and she has somebody that did that for her. So I'm hoping that maybe in this talk, somebody will Google Jim Rohn or Brian Tracy, and it'll start that path for them.
And how exactly did that lead you into real estate?
Real estate, the stats are out there that most people make their wealth in businesses and hold it in real estate. So I kind of thought, it all evolved, right, over time, but I kind of thought to myself, well, if I could make my business real estate, well, then it's kind of the best of both. So, in the beginning, it was just as simple as renovating places, and then we would try to sell them, try to flip them. And it was usually the case where we couldn't get what we wanted, so we just rented them out and kept them. So yeah, that's basically why real estate. It's just a solid asset. It's tangible. It's like steady Eddie. Even if it doesn't go up in value, the tenants pay down your mortgage for you over time. There's leverage, which is a huge benefit to real estate. Like, for example, if you buy let's say $100,000 worth of stocks or gold, you have to put up $100,000. If you buy $100,000 worth of real estate, you only have to put up maybe $20,000. So you leverage, you use the bank's money to make money. There's a book called Using the Bank's Money to Get Rich. It's a nice benefit to real estate for sure.
So tell us more about the company that you started.
I'm a part owner of every property, including my principal residence. I don't, actually, the one that I own myself now is the gym. But I'm a part owner of just shy of 70 units. And then there's also about 9 units or so that PeeverConn Properties rents, furnishes, and re-rents. So it's called subletting. And so we control, I think it's 74.
And how well is it working out for you now?
Well, it's worked out well. Through going to the seminars and things like that, I was able to learn about furnished rental properties. And that's how I was able to leave my job in 2009 and do this full time, is because we started a business called Super Suites. And it's basically furnished rental accommodations. The average stay is 1 to 6 months. For people that have had fire, flood, or they're in between homes, or new to an area, or here for work. Because the whole nature of the workforce is changing a lot. It's more transient and contract-based. So I think it's a global trend. It's a lot more of these people that are here for 3 months to work. Like, for example, when they build a new mall in Abbotsford, they send their crews from Ontario usually, or Alberta, to do like Fatburger was one. Like they have their people that do their stores everywhere, or the Lego store, they have their people. So it's that's kind of how I was able to get out of the tugboats and into real estate full time. Is kind of in a property management role. Like I do a lot of the check-in, check-outs myself, which is cool because you meet a lot of really cool business people. And we've actually had a few people that stayed in Super Suites that wound up investing with me later because they see the concept and stuff. So yeah, it's working out well. And you know, we don't do unfurnished rentals anymore because we can earn more money for our investors with the Super Suites. But we're also getting into bigger deals like repositioning projects where we find a building that's say 6 to 20 units, those mom and pop type owners, and you can say it's got deferred maintenance. You go in and you fix the place up. You know, you change the curb appeal of the building, you change the resident profile, ideally in an area that's also coming up and improving. So like you take like a C- building and turn it into a B in an area that's also coming up, and you can make, you know, good returns doing that. We did a building in Maple Ridge, an 8-unit building, a group of us, fixed it all up and things are going well. So here we are at the Seasons in Abbotsford, BC. This is a building that we own several units in, and 3 of them are furnished rentals, 1 of them is unfurnished. I wanted to tell you about a deal that we did here. It was fairly unique, and a lot of people don't know that this type of deal can happen. A gentleman approached us looking to sell his property because he knew we were buying in the building, and through discussions we found out that he had no mortgage on the property. So we made him an offer where he would basically be the bank for us, and he carried the whole purchase price. It's called a vendor take-back mortgage. It was much more prominent in the 80s when interest rates were really high, but people don't know that one person can be the bank for another person, just like the bank. So he carried the whole purchase price, $177,500, and instead of all this interest over 5 years going to the bank, it went to him. And I actually showed him that on a piece of paper, and he liked that, the tune of that. So all we had to come up with was the closing costs, the lawyer's fees and things like that, and in this case we bought furniture. And actually I had a partner put up the money for that, so it was truly this zero down deal that you hear about. So they do exist, and just through building a track record, knowing what you're talking about, you can often get people to carry some seller financing.
So you talk about not having to have money to be able to make money. Can you elaborate more on that?
Well, you know, I already mentioned that I did have a little bit of money when I started, which was fortunate because it's tough for a lot of people to even save up that much. But I see it time and time again in seminars and in the marketplace where somebody doesn't have a relative that will help them out or doesn't have any savings, can't save, and which is, you know, a fundamental problem in itself, because you need to be able to save. You need the discipline to be able to save. But these people, you know, they don't have money, they get enough knowledge where they can convincingly show an opportunity to somebody, and if they know their stuff and they find a good deal, like good deals find investors, right? You have a good deal or a good opportunity, it will find the money, and if they're passionate about it, that's a key thing. And the investor quite often will invest mainly based on the person, even more than the opportunity. If they feel that they're the kind of person that's going to do whatever it takes, you know, they have integrity, they're going to work day and night if things get tough, that kind of thing. So you really don't need money to make money. It definitely helps, no doubt, but you know, you can start any sort of business these days with very little. Like there's courses online, on YouTube even, on how to start any business with next to no money. So it's definitely doable. You know, don't let it hold you back, the fact that you don't have money, because that's what I find a lot of people is holding them back. Okay, so here we are at Fernwood Manor in Abbotsford, BC. And I wanted to show you guys this property because this is one of the more mistake-ish properties that we made. We bought it back in 2007, kind of at the peak. There was multiple offers on everything, and you would just buy anything decent that you could get your hands on. So big lesson there. You know, you want to be greedy when others are fearful, fearful when others are greedy. Don't get into multiple offer situations. We have an awesome unit here, top floor corner, 1,100 square feet, overlooking a new park that we knew was coming in that not everyone knew. But as you can see, the curb appeal, which is how the building looks from the street, is not that hot, and I find that it takes a lot of my time to show it before I get it rented. It's just much better to deal in properties that look really great from the street. It makes life easy. First showing, you rent it out, not the 10th showing. So I just wanted to show you guys this one. Stick to properties that look good. There was a study done Canada-wide of what was important to tenants. Curb appeal's #1, then the safe, secure feeling, lastly the suite itself. So keep that in mind in your investments.
And then what changed for you?
And as far as the company goes, you know, we've got huge plans. Like, I changed it from PeeverConn Properties to PeeverConn Group of Companies, kind of modeling my mentor Warren Buffett, you know, Berkshire Hathaway. That's how he became the richest man in the world, was building a group of companies. And the key is people, having the best people. Like, the team that fields the best people wins. So I consider myself, you know, a full-time talent scout, and you just try to really, you know, when you find good people, treat them really well, and that's really the key to growing, because you can only do so much yourself, right? So. And
tell us more about some of your other properties.
Well, one that I'm really proud of is a property in that 8-unit building. It's a 3,300 square foot commercial unit, and I started off with 2 partners on it, and now it's just me that owns it, because I over time bought them both out. And right now it's a group fitness facility. So it's got Carlson Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, it's got Envy Fitness, it's got a weight loss consultant. And in June, Envy Fitness is going to be taking it over, and they're upgrading it to a CrossFit gym, and it's going to get like $50,000 worth of equipment and new signage and a lot of renovations in the bathrooms and stuff. So that's probably my favorite little property. I'm going to show you guys Mahogany, which is really exciting too. It's a new high-rise getting built in Abbotsford, so lots of cool stuff going on. So here we are at the Mahogany at Mill Lake site, where they're going to be building a 26-story tower in 2014. It's really exciting. It's the tallest building in BC outside of Metro Vancouver. The tallest building in BC currently is only 17 stories, so it's going to be a real landmark. And I'm just thrilled to be involved with a group of investors that's buying a block of units. We're going to be doing some seniors independent living, where there's 24-hour concierge, meals being catered, and all kinds of resort-style amenities on site. So, you know, I just wanted to show you guys this latest project that I'm working on, because it's really mind-blowing when you look at my first condo in Agassiz in 2006 for $65,000, and now just through building a track record, getting educated, you know, people see that you have become the person that's worthy of something like this. So I'm just so grateful and excited to be a part of this project. Well, you know, I own quite a few assets, and a lot of people's mind, that would be, you know, my biggest asset would be the real estate, but I really look at my biggest asset as my personal philosophy, which is something that I've learned from, you know, the great business philosophers and motivational legends of our time, like Jim Rohn, Brian Tracy, Les Brown, you know, these Zig Ziglar. Like, these guys are all starting to pass away. Like, half the people I just mentioned are gone now. So I really feel that it's the next generation's responsibility to keep that, you know, philosophy going, because there's so much negative philosophy in the world that it's good to pass along this positive stuff, because I really make a study of successful people. And if you study anyone that's done really great things, you can usually always track it back to one of these great business motivational philosophers, or who taught them. You know, it all started with like Andrew Carnegie and Napoleon Hill and Think and Grow Rich, and the whole science of self-achievement and all that stuff. So, you know, Jim Rohn is one that had a real impact on me, and he talks about the set of the sail. So you think of your personal philosophy as the set of the sail, of your own sail, and like the same wind blows on us all, right? But it's what you do with it, and your set of the sail with where you go and how you react to it. Like, you know, your last great freedom is how you react to any given situation, right? So, and he talks about the seasons of life, you know, so I always think in the tough times, like, okay, this is winter right now, but after every winter comes spring. And, you know, it's been that way for thousands of years. It's going to happen. Same thing in the real estate market, same thing in business cycles, everything. And in the spring, you need to plant in order to reap your harvest in the fall, right? You either have to get good at planting in the spring or begging in the fall. So you need to do the work basically, and then in the summer you need to tend and weed the garden because the noxious bugs and everything will attack your portfolio and everything, so you need to defend it like a mother does, right? And you know, what else can I tell you about philosophy? He talks about the ant philosophy. It's like just little simple things that he has such a simple way. Like, he's a farmer from Idaho, and now he went from humble beginnings to living in Beverly Hills and being like a world-class business consultant. So he's got a really cool way of explaining things really simply. And like, for example, the ant philosophy, it's like, you know, an ant can carry double his body weight. And, you know, if you try to block an ant from his path, he'll go around, he'll keep going, you know, until he either finds his way or dies, right? It never gives up. And you always picture the ant in the winter inside the anthill going, it's all right, guys, you know, we'll be out of here in no time, like, you know, optimistic. And then in the summer and spring, he's preparing for winter the whole time, right? So it's kind of a good little simple philosophy to take on.
So what is next for the company at this point?
Well, it's actually mind-blowing what happens, but like, for example, at Mahogany, I was approached by the developer because she knows about super suites, and I've bought units in several of her buildings. And she approached me because there's this investor group based in Abbotsford that's buying over 30 units in this high-rise, and asked me if I would be willing to be part of that, and I get to share in the ownership and manage all the units. Originally we thought as super suites, but through the process of doing the research, we decided to go with independent seniors suites. And it was already something I was interested in because I had gone around touring all of the independent living facilities, just getting into it, and it's like the law of attraction, right? It's like I was looking into that, and then all of a sudden this comes out of nowhere, and they asked me to be part of this. So, you know, who thought when I bought a $65,000 condo in Agassiz a few years ago that now I'd be approached by investor groups to do this? But it's just building track record, you know, having a good reputation of integrity, and knowing that I really feel I'd be the best guy for the job in town that they could go to. So, you know, we'll definitely be getting more into the seniors independent living, because that's a big baby boomer demographic that's coming. I'd like to expand super suites business, perhaps in central Alberta, northeast BC, Fraser Valley. So it's just a matter of finding the right people to look after things for me, but I think we've got a really good business model.
Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Sleeping? Sleeping? What do you think this is? Get your butt up. We got some work to do. What? You think it's a game? You think it's a game? Don't give me that. Oh my God, I can't believe he's talking to me like that. Get up. Let's go. We got some work to do. Let's go. Come on, Yvonne. I mean, Yvette. Get up. Get up. Here. Get in there. Driver. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. It's showtime. Let's go. Right. Left. Right. Nice. Strong, gotta be strong. Up, down, up, down, up, down. Up, down, up, down.
Get fit with Tommy Europe, the official trainer of the Ms. and Mr. Vancouver, pageant contestant. Chris, your first runner-up, which means that your winner for tonight's Mr. and Mrs. Vancouver is Logan, ladies and gentlemen. Logan is the new Mr. Vancouver. Give it up for Logan, everybody!
Okay, so the first runner-up, Dakota.
Which means that your first Miss Vancouver, Ashley Brooks!
This is a great event. I've never seen one of this magnitude in Harrison Hot Springs.
I represent Clarence Cosmetics, a worldwide company, and we look forward to being a corporate sponsor next time.